Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis.
Yeah.
Today, we're going deep, into a classic, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah. Great choice.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too.
And we've got a ton of resources here.
Yeah.
Biographical info on Fitzgerald himself. We've got critical essays.
Okay.
Historical context about the Roaring Twenties.
Nice.
The works. So this is going to be a wild ride.
You know what's really interesting about Gatsby is the way Fitzgerald just perfectly captures that whole jazz age feeling, the glamour, the excess, and then that kind of underlying sense of disillusionment.
Right.
It's like a world of shimmering surfaces. But then the deeper you go, you start to see the cracks, all those little imperfections beneath the surface.
Okay, so let's paint the picture for our listeners here.
Yeah.
Who is this Gatsby guy?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about his world that's so captivating?
All right, so Jay Gatsby, he's this enigmatic millionaire throwing these lavish parties at his giant mansion out in West Egg, Long Island. He's always surrounded by people. Tons of guests every night. Yet there's this really profound sense of loneliness about him, almost like a sadness. He's built up this whole persona, this image of success, but it's all a carefully crafted illusion. It's all designed to win back his lost love, Daisy Buchanan.
So there's more to him than meets the eye. That's intriguing. What can you tell us about Daisy and her world?
Well, Daisy represents old money, the established aristocracy of East Egg.
Ah, okay.
She's beautiful, she's charming, but also a little shallow and careless. She's stuck in this loveless marriage with the arrogant and kind of brutal Tom Buchanan.
Right.
Gatsby's whole idealized vision of Daisy, his longing for the past, that's what drives the entire story.
So we're seeing this tension between new money and old money, between aspiration and reality. Fitzgerald isn't just telling a love story here, is he? He's exploring some, deeper societal dynamics.
Precisely.
I like it.
The novel contrasts the flashy, almost vulgar extravagance of West Egg with that understated elegance and social hierarchy of East Egg. Gatsby, despite all his wealth, will always be an outsider, striving to break into a world that ultimately will reject him.
And then there's this Valley of Ashes thing mentioned in the outline. It sounds pretty grim. What's the significance of that place?
Oh, yeah. The Valley of Ashes. That's this desolate wasteland. It's between West Egg and New York City.
Okay.
A stark reminder of the social and economic inequalities that underpin all the era's prosperity.
Right.
It really symbolizes the moral decay and the spiritual emptiness that's hidden beneath that glittering surface of the Roaring Twenties.
Wow, yeah, that's a powerful contrast. It makes you question the true cost of this lavish lifestyle. It reminds me of that saying, all that glitters is not gold.
Indeed. Yeah. The novel is constantly putting beauty and ugliness side by side, dreams and reality, creating this tension that just keeps you hooked.
Yeah, I can see that. So you mentioned that Gatsby's persona is an illusion. What's the truth behind the facade? Why is he so fixated on recreating the past with Daisy?
Well, Gatsby's real name is actually James Gatz, and he comes from really humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
His reinvention is driven by this obsessive desire to recapture the past, specifically this brief passionate affair he had with Daisy 5 years earlier.
Okay.
His lavish parties, his ostentatious displays of wealth, it's all designed to impress her, to convince her that he's worthy of her love.
So he's chasing this idealized version of Daisy, a ghost of his past. It makes you wonder if he truly loves her, or if he's in love with the idea of her, with what she represents.
Well, that's a great point. It really raises questions about the nature of memory and desire, and that whole idea of the impossibility of recapturing the past.
Right.
The green light at the end of Daisy's dock, the one Gatsby stares at longingly?
Yeah.
That becomes this really potent symbol of unattainable yearning.
Right, the green light. That image is so evocative. The novel style reminds me of a photograph.
Yeah.
All these vivid snapshots of moments and characters.
That's an interesting observation. The novel was written during a time when photography was rapidly changing how people saw the world. Maybe Fitzgerald was influenced by that.
Right.
The way he jumps between scenes, offering glimpses into different perspectives, it feels very cinematic, almost like a series of carefully composed shots.
Okay, so we've got this self-made millionaire Gatsby throwing extravagant parties to impress his lost love, Daisy, all while living in a society obsessed with wealth and status. But there are these dark undercurrents, too, hints of corruption and moral decay lurking beneath the surface. Where does this deep dive take us next?
As we dig deeper into Gatsby's world, we start to realize that his pursuit of Daisy, it's intertwined with this desire for something even bigger than love, almost a yearning to transcend his past and rewrite his destiny.
That's interesting. So you're saying it's not just about winning Daisy back. There's a deeper layer to his ambition.
Exactly. Gatsby believes that by accumulating enough wealth and reaching a certain social status, he can erase his humble beginnings and finally be worthy of Daisy. She represents everything he's ever desired.
But isn't there a danger in that, trying to rewrite the past?
Yeah.
Can you really escape who you are?
That's the central tragedy of Gatsby's story, you see. He's so fixated on recreating this perfect moment from his past that he just fails to see the present for what it is.
Right.
Daisy is not the same woman she was 5 years ago, and no amount of wealth can change that.
That makes me think about those elaborate parties Gatsby throws. They seem so glamorous on the surface, but there's an underlying sadness to them, almost like a desperate attempt to fill a void.
Exactly. The parties are a spectacle, a performance for Daisy's attention. But they're also filled with these shallow, opportunistic people who are only interested in Gatsby's wealth and the entertainment.
Yeah, it's like that scene where Nick describes the aftermath of one of Gatsby's parties with the empty champagne bottles and the discarded party favors and just this general sense of disillusionment. It's like a metaphor for the emptiness at the heart of this whole lifestyle.
Fitzgerald is so brilliant at using imagery to convey the themes. Remember the Valley of Ashes?
Oh, yeah.
That desolate landscape represents the moral wasteland beneath the Roaring Twenties.
In the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, that looming billboard overlooking the Valley of Ashes, always watching.
Such a powerful image, those eyes. They seem to symbolize a moral judgment, a reminder that even in this world of reckless abandon, actions have consequences.
Which brings us to the turning point of the story. The tragic car crash that kills Myrtle Wilson.
Yeah, this event, it just shatters the illusion of Gatsby's world and sets in motion this chain of events leading to his downfall.
It's interesting how Fitzgerald foreshadows the tragedy. With that scene where Daisy seems to confuse Gatsby for Tom, right before the crash, almost as if she senses that something terrible is about to happen.
Yes, that moment. It highlights Daisy's blurred perception of the two men and foreshadows the tragic consequences of her inability to choose.
Yeah.
The crash exposes Tom's brutality and Daisy's moral weakness as she retreats back into the safety of her wealth and privilege, leaving Gatsby to take the blame.
And Gatsby, blinded by his love for Daisy, willingly accepts responsibility for the crash.
He's so fixated on protecting Daisy, he doesn't seem to grasp how serious the situation is, clinging to that belief that he can somehow fix everything and win her back.
It's heartbreaking, his unwavering loyalty to Daisy, even as she betrays him, and ultimately that loyalty leads to his death.
Yes, Gatsby becomes a victim of his own illusions, shot by George Wilson, who mistakenly believes Gatsby was driving the car. He dies alone, abandoned by the very people he tried so hard to impress.
There's just this profound sense of tragedy in his death. He spent his entire life chasing a dream that was ultimately unattainable.
And his death is made even more poignant. By the emptiness of his funeral, very few people show up, highlighting the shallowness of those relationships he built during his rise.
Even Meyer Wolfsheim, his supposed friend and business partner, stays away, refuses to get mixed up in it. It's like Gatsby's whole existence has been erased, his life reduced to possessions and fleeting memories.
Yeah, his lavish mansion, once the scene of extravagant parties, now stands empty, a monument to the fleeting nature of dreams and the hollowness of a life built on material possessions.
It's a stark reminder that true fulfillment comes from genuine connections and living a life true to yourself, not from chasing illusions or seeking validation from others. It's interesting how Gatsby's death kind of shifts the whole focus of the story. To Nick Carraway, the narrator, up until this point, he's been more of an observer, drawn into Gatsby's world, but always maintaining a certain distance.
Yeah, Nick's role is really crucial. He's like our moral compass, the one who guides us through the moral complexities of Gatsby's world, helps us make sense of this whole tragedy. He's both fascinated and repelled by the excesses of the Roaring Twenties, struggling to reconcile his own values with the temptations of wealth and status.
And as he witnesses everything unfold, he starts to question everything he thought he knew about the American dream and the people chasing it.
Exactly. He begins to see the emptiness behind that glittering facade.
Yeah.
The corruption, the moral decay lurking beneath the surface. Gatsby's death really forces him to confront the hollowness of it all. This society obsessed with material possessions and that fleeting nature of social status.
It's like he's going through an awakening, realizing that the values he grew up with Honesty, integrity, hard work, they don't seem to apply in this new world.
Exactly. Remember how Nick describes his Midwestern upbringing?
Yeah.
With its emphasis on family tradition, a strong moral code? That world seems so distant now, almost like a dream.
And as Nick becomes more disillusioned with the East Coast elite, he also starts to see Gatsby in a new light.
He recognizes Gatsby's flaws, of course, his obsession with Daisy, his willingness to bend the rules. But he also sees his genuine capacity for love, his unwavering idealism, and that tragic yearning for a better life.
It's almost as if Nick is the only one who truly understands Gatsby, who sees the man beneath the myth.
And that's why Nick is the one who tells Gatsby's story, who shapes our whole perception of this enigmatic figure. He pieces together the fragments of Gatsby's past, trying to make sense of his life and death.
And through Nick's eyes, we see Gatsby not just as a flawed individual, but as a symbol of an entire generation, disillusioned by war, consumed by materialism, desperately searching for meaning in a world that feels empty and superficial.
Fitzgerald uses Gatsby's story to really explore the dark side of the American dream. You know, that idea that anyone can achieve success and happiness through hard work? That Gatsby's pursuit of wealth and status ultimately destroys him, suggesting that maybe the dream itself is corrupt and unattainable.
So what's the takeaway for us? What can we learn from Gatsby's tragic story, almost 100 years after it was written?
Well, I think The Great Gatsby offers a timeless warning about the dangers of chasing illusions, the emptiness of material possessions, and the importance of living a life true to yourself. It reminds us that true happiness comes from genuine connections, meaningful relationships, and a sense of purpose beyond just wealth and status.
It's a reminder that we need to be careful not to let our dreams become obsessions, blinding us to the reality around us and the consequences of our choices.
Exactly. We need to find a balance between our aspirations and our values, between our desire for success and our need for authenticity. And we need to be mindful of how society can shape our desires and distort our perceptions of happiness.
Fitzgerald's novel is both a celebration and a critique of the American dream, reminding us that the pursuit of happiness can be a double-edged sword.
And it leaves us with this haunting sense of melancholy, a recognition that even in the midst of wealth and abundance, there's a profound longing for something more, a yearning for a connection that transcends the material world.
The Great Gatsby is a novel that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you reflect on your own life, your own values, and your own pursuit of happiness.
Absolutely. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend picking up a copy. It's a timeless masterpiece with profound insights into the human condition. And if you've read it before, I encourage you to revisit it with fresh eyes. You might be surprised at what you discover.
We'll be sure to include a link to purchase the book in the description below. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button. And check out our other deep dives into captivating works of literature. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of The Great Gatsby and